Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth and I run the blog lifefromtheviolasection.com where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. Today I want to talk a little bit about just some general audition tips for musicians. So a lot of my students are auditioning in the next couple months for different ensembles and schools and just different things coming up. So I wanted to provide a few kind of basic tips for people who are auditioning for the first couple times. I know that when it's one of your first auditions for anything, it feels really, really life-changing. Like whether or not you make it into this thing is going to dictate your whole life. It's not. One audition doesn't mean absolutely everything. I mean, in some cases it can, but it's probably less of a big deal than you might think it is if you're really, really nervous. So there are kind of three topics that we'll talk about today. The first one is preparing musically, the second one is preparing mentally, and the last one is just kind of some general tips for when you're in your audition. So preparing musically is probably the thing that you should do first, or start doing first. So as soon as you find out about the audition, it's good to start working on what you're going to prepare right then and there. So if you've got a couple months or maybe even a year before the audition and you know what they're requiring, work your way towards that. If you've got a couple months, then that's a great time to learn your repertoire for that and gain the skills that you might need in that audition. One of the best things you can do is prepare musically and mentally and physically as early as you can, because that practicing that you do is going to compound and it's really going to build on itself so that you've got a great foundation to fall back on if you get nervous and your playing just doesn't feel very good in the audition. You've had months and months or just hours and hours and hours of practicing that will pay off and will really, really give you something good to fall back on if you need it. Cramming your practice over the last week or two or a couple of days before an audition is really risky because you're not going to have that long-term memory in your brain and in your muscles of what exactly to do if you get nervous and you kind of lock up or freeze up. Both musically and mentally, I think it's really important to do some investigating before the audition and when you're kind of choosing what you're going to perform for an audition if you get a bit of a choice. So think about, what does this ensemble or school or whatever you're auditioning for prioritize? Is this a school where they want you to get better and they're going to teach you? Is this an ensemble where they're looking for how you would play in a group? Is this a concerto competition where they want you to be really showy? Think of the skills that you need to show off for this audition, or if it's an orchestra audition, maybe like different dynamics and staying within a section or being malleable with your tempos, different things like that. There are kind of different skill sets and requirements for each type of thing that you're auditioning for. So think of what they're looking for, what they want in a candidate, and kind of let that influence your choices in what repertoire you choose and also how you play all of the repertoire that you're performing in your audition. Those should definitely be your priorities. Also, if there are kind of easy things on your audition, like maybe a scale that seems super simple and then like there's a really difficult scale too, don't spend all your time practicing the difficult scale. Make sure you review the easier things too. You want them to both feel really, really good. That's the goal. So don't just focus on the hard spots. I know that those are going to need more time, so definitely practice those, focus on them, but don't leave those easy things behind, because then when you don't have that like compounded practice built up, then you might freeze up and forget it. So just be sure you're reviewing absolutely everything that they might ask for on the audition so that you're prepared in absolutely everything that you can. And that's why it's important to practice really, really as early on as you can so that you've got the time to practice and look over everything that you need for the audition. The longer you have, the better you'll be able to do that. So now let's talk a little bit about preparing mentally. First thing to really know when you're preparing mentally is that the judges aren't out to get you. They probably don't hate you, and they might seem cranky. If you see a judge that seems a little bit cranky or is like, okay, you can perform, it's probably just that they don't want to be there, especially if it's a weekend. They might have a family. They would probably rather be home with their kids, or they might just want to watch TV or something instead of sitting there listening to a ton of violists for hours and hours playing the same exact things. It's tiring and repetitive and, not the most fun thing in the world. So they don't hate you. They don't think you're terrible. It's just that sometimes the judges don't super want to be there, or they've heard a lot of people already today and they're just kind of tired. Something that takes a long time to really understand is that you have no control over the outcome of the audition. Yes, you have a little bit of control in how much you prepare and how good you are and how well you play and everything like that. But after that, you can't control anything. You can't control how the judges rate you or whether or not you get in or what placement you get. You don't have control of it over it. The only thing you have control over is your playing and maybe like your resume or something. You know, you can only control so much. The rest is up to everyone else. So when you're done playing, that's the end of all that you can do, really. So one thing is just to come to terms with that fact that you can't control your placement. You can't control whether or not you get in. All you can control is the way that you play. And even that sometimes feels out of our control, right? So let yourself know that you have no control over the outcome or the decision. All you can do is your best, and then it's out of your hands and you have to let it go. Also, even if you have an unsuccessful audition where you don't get what you wanted, it's always very, very good experience. The more auditions you do, usually the better you'll get at it. Everyone reacts differently under pressure and with performance anxiety, and I have a whole video on performance anxiety tips and just some basic kind of nerve blocking things to do when you're performing that also might give you some help if you're feeling really nervous. So be sure to check that video out after this one today. But some people feel nervous for auditions their entire lives. Some people feel better after a couple auditions or after 20 or after 30. But the more you do it, the more you're going to get used to the outcome not being in your hands, used to playing under pressure, and used to preparing, then doing, and then just waiting for the outcome. It's a process, and sometimes it just takes a lot of practice in the process to get used to it. Tips for when you're in the audition. Day of the audition, it's really, really helpful and important to keep your usual routines, to eat things that you know sit well with you, and drink lots of water the day before and the day of, just so that your body is running at its best. I know there are some variables that are out of our control with how your body does, like how much you have to travel for the audition, if you have to travel at all, or how early you have to wake up, but do your best to acclimate yourself to whatever situation you need to be in so that it feels somewhat normal. And then I like to warm up a little bit, make sure that, like, kind of check in and see what type of playing day it is. Like, sometimes I have really, really good playing days where it's like playing viola feels really, really great and everything is coming naturally. Other days I will have kind of bad playing days where the viola isn't sitting right and I can't get in tune and the bow isn't sitting on the string and it keeps bouncing, things like that. So I like to check in, see what kind of day it is, see what I'm dealing with, and then practice a couple things, run through a couple little spots, but I don't like to play everything a lot. Personally, I found that that works for me because if I play through everything, especially more than once, then I start to just like overthink everything and then it's like I've played it too much that day and it's kind of just a waste. So for me, just minimal warming up, even playing things that are not on the audition are helpful because then I'm really, really warming up. I'm getting my fingers going. I'm in a musical mindset, but I haven't overdone all of the things that I need to perform that I'm going to be judged on. Other than keeping your routine as simple and as normal as possible and doing a warm-up that kind of works for you, I think one of the hard things about auditions is being around all these other people and comparing yourself to the people around you, especially when they're warming up. Some people like to show off when they warm up. Some people will just kind of play some open strings when they warm up. Some others will put on noise canceling headphones and warm up. That way they can't hear anyone around them so that they can't judge them or get nervous or overwhelmed or anything. So it can be hard. A nice thing to do is find a corner and just play into the corner of the room. That way all you're seeing is walls and you can hear what's going on around you, but you kind of have your own isolated space to practice. But if you can get your own isolated space, like an actual practice room or something like that, and they might bring you to one right before your audition time, then that's super helpful because then you can only hear yourself. You're not overwhelmed by hearing people brag about themselves or show off while they're warming up, things like that. So other people can definitely scare you at an audition. Once you're at the audition, you can't really prepare anymore other than like warming up, but that's just getting yourself in the mindset to play. You can't really make things better an hour or two before the audition. So where you're at is where you're at, and those people might just be saying things to help themselves feel better and to make other people feel intimidated. So I like to keep to myself at auditions, and that just kind of works for me. Okay, when you're actually in the audition and you're not warming up anymore, you're in front of the judges, take your time in your audition. When we're playing in an audition or if we're playing in concert, everything feels so slow. Time just slows down, especially in between pieces or selections. So if the judges ask for one scale, make sure you know what scale it is, how you need to start, what finger patterns, maybe any other information that you need to know, and then get started. Then they might ask for a different scale. Think about what's different about that scale. Find your finger pattern. Think about anything else that you need to that's different from what you just played before. Because if you just go into it, that's where a lot of us mess up, because we're like, oh, we can't have any silence. We can't keep the judges waiting. We have to go right on, especially if it's between two pieces that are in two different keys, like one is in D major and the other's in A flat. We need to take a minute, maybe not a full minute, but at least a couple seconds to look through the music. Remember, okay, different finger pattern, different key signature, different time signature, different tempo. You need to get into the mindset of the piece. So take at least like 20 seconds, which feels like an eternity, and think about those things. Think through parts of the piece or parts of the excerpt. How fast you want to play them, how slow you want to play them, what you need to do with your bow, if you're shifting a lot, anything that's going on with the notes, whatever instrument you play. Then when you feel centered, start. If we just rush into it, I find that that's when we make kind of stupid mistakes, like things we've never done before, because we didn't take our time to get into the mindset of the next piece that we're playing. So center yourself, make sure you're ready and you're thinking about what you're playing next, and then go. And you might find that everything is smoother. Also make sure that you breathe in between your performances. When you're thinking about these things, make sure you're breathing. Try to breathe nice and slow if you're nervous. That'll slow down your heart rate a little bit and help you feel a little bit better. And again, afterwards, you have no control of the outcome. So you play how you play, and then you hang out or leave and you wait to find out the results. The minute you play the last note, it's out of your hands. So relax, even though it's very hard to do. Sometimes waiting for your result is the hardest part of an audition, because there's so much anxiety and analyzing of what you just did and wondering if it was good enough, or wondering if one mistake meant that you don't get what you want. So analyzing your performance is very important. Definitely do that, but don't judge yourself too much. Analyze, wait to judge later, I'd say. So those are just a few kind of basic tips for auditioning, especially if you're auditioning for an ensemble or an event or kind of like a high school, something like that. Just do what you can, take as much time as you can to prepare, and then day of audition, you just play and then it's out of your hands. So do what you can, keep breathing through all of it, and you'll find out what you got. And each audition is another practice, really. You get better and better the longer that you go. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. If there's anything that went unanswered, I would love to help you out and help you feel better before your audition. If you'd like some more tips for performance anxiety or audition tips, please let me know, because I have a lot more up my sleeve and I can go a lot more in depth if you'd like. So let me know if that's something that interests you. And please consider subscribing to my channel. Right now, when I'm recording this, I have 7 subscribers left until I hit 1,000, which is super exciting. If you have any ideas of what I should do to celebrate 1,000 subscribers, please comment down below, because I need to think of something. And also, I'm really excited. So please subscribe if you like musical content. I upload basically every Sunday at noon Eastern time. Thanks for watching.